Hey, Lizzie. I'm gonna wait a couple of minutes to see if more people can join us. Um, so feel free to let me know how you're doing, what you're doing. It's Friday, guys. I'm sure some of you guys are excited about that. Hey, Norma. Hey, Marcy. Glad to see you all joining us. We're gonna wait a few more minutes before we get started. So I know that we've had a couple of Facebook Lives going on today. Um, did you guys get a chance to watch any of them? And if so, which one has been your favorite so far? I didn't get to see all of Jackie's because I was working on something else. I got to see the end of it. I did like her breathing tips. I actually had to use them before doing this live because I was starting to get a little bit nervous. So that helped. I've seen other people do what Alex was doing with the rocks, and they would leave them at different parks, and they kind of made it like a community thing where they would use a specific hashtag and they would share the positive message on social media. So I think that that's another thing that we could add to that. I don't know if Alex mentioned it, um, but I think that's a really cool way to get kids to think about positive reminders that they need. and for families to be able to spend time together, especially right now. So we're gonna wait maybe like about 3 more minutes before we get started. So feel free to invite your friends, family, anybody that you think could benefit from this presentation. We're gonna be talking about safeguarding prescription drugs and alcohol. So we'll give it another minute or so. Alrighty, so I'll go ahead and get started. People can always join in as the live is being played. So, feel free to invite those around you. So, for those of you all that don't know me, my name is Bianca Vieira. I am the UNIDAD Coalition coordinator. UNIDAD is one of the coalitions that we have in Hidalgo County. It's actually the only coalition that we have in Hidalgo County right now. It's obviously a program through Behavioral Health Solutions, and we focus on prevention of substance use. And what I mean by substance use are substances that we felt or that data showed were an issue within our community. So those were underage drinking, prescription drugs, marijuana, and tobacco. We also do talk about synthetic marijuana as well, kind of like a subcategory of marijuana. So through the coalition, we work collaboratively with a lot of our members of the community, whether they're people from schools, law enforcement, other nonprofit organizations, places from recovery. Parents are welcome to join in and be a part of our coalition as well. And we even have a youth group, which I'll talk towards the end. Our goal for the coalition is to educate our community and to raise awareness on these 4 topics that I mentioned. We know that the only way to prevent something from happening is educating and preparing, right? We can, the times of, just telling kids to say no to drugs, that doesn't work anymore. Kids are curious, kids want to ask questions. So we need to be able to provide them with those answers as adults and members of a community. So we do also equip parents, we educate them and do presentations for them so that they can also be aware and have knowledge as to how to respond to the questions that kids and teens may be having. So yeah, so that's what our coalition does. We do a lot of events out in the community. We try to be very engaged, which with everything going on right now has been a little bit tough. However, BHS is still wanting to continue and provide support to our community because now more than ever it is needed. This is why we're starting to do the Facebook Lives, like you all may have seen already this past week. There's also been works on YouTube videos that are going to be just small snippets of information that we're just wanting to share with our community. We want to be able to continue and provide support to those that need it. So yeah. So that's a little bit as far as like what the coalition is, what we do. So today we're going to start talking about safeguarding our home, right? A lot of us are at home. Also, let me know if I'm glitching because on my computer it keeps on going in and out. So can someone let me know, make sure that I'm not glitching? Because it's kind of throwing me off. I see it blinking. I just want to make sure that you guys are able to see me correctly, and that everything's working properly. Someone give me a thumbs up. Am I good? Yes, no, maybe? Okay. Okay. Lizzie told me I look okay, so I'll continue. Alrighty. So yes, that's a little bit of our agency. As you have seen, we just want to, be there for our community. So today we're going to be talking about safeguarding our home, especially once it comes to alcohol and prescription drugs. It's not. We talk a lot about safeguarding our prescription drugs. At least the coalition does, right? It's one of our efforts. It's one of the things that we make sure that we're going out into the community and talking about. One thing that we haven't done much is talking about how we safeguard our alcohol. And I think it's interesting because when I was working on this for this live, I realized just how similar alcohol and prescription drugs can be. So, a question for you all. What are some similarities between alcohol and prescription drugs? And there's no right or wrong answer. I didn't think about this until I started working on this specific live. So I think it would be interesting for you all to share your thoughts. What do you think there are any similarities between alcohol and prescription drugs, or no? Trying to see if anyone has a thought that they want to share with me. Okay, so the fact that they can both be harmful, that's a similarity. Sometimes we don't even think about that, right? I think one of the first things that, yeah, I was about to say that, Norma. One of the first things that I realized is the fact that they're both legal, right? But they're both legal under certain circumstances, which is really important that we are aware, right? For alcohol, you have to be over the age of 21 to purchase it. For prescription drugs, it's only legal if the prescription was prescribed to you. So they're legal with certain specifications. So we have to consider that. We can't just, not give not care about it and just be okay with someone having or taking or misusing or abusing without any consideration otherwise. So I thought that was really interesting to point out just how similar they both can be. And they were both often misused or abused in our communities. Just like like Lizzie mentioned, they both, when we're misusing or abusing either one of these, they can be very harmful to us, and sometimes even to other people. I thought about the fact that they're also both highly accepted, right? Um, Once it comes to alcohol, it's very common for us to see alcohol at birthday parties for kids, at baptisms, quinceañeras, you know, in family environments. They can be extremely common. We see them, we know they're there. So if we know they're there, kids know that they're also there, right? And prescription drugs, although not in the same way, people aren't like necessarily showing around their prescription drugs or anything like that, but we have gotten really comfortable with them. And we'll talk a little bit about what I mean when I say that. But before we get into that, I wanted to ask you all, do you all think that misuse and abuse are the same thing? And the reason I ask that is because I've used that term already, when we talk about misusing and abusing alcohol or prescription drugs, but I also want to make sure that we are aware that those two things are very different. Okay? So what do y'all think? Do y'all think misuse and abuse are the same thing? And if you don't think that they're the same thing, if you could, expand a little bit or share what do you think some of the differences are between those two terms? The way I've normally defined misuse for some of when I do presentations and I ask them this exact same question, is misuse is when we're doing something or using something not in the way that it was intended, right? So for prescription drugs, forms of misuse is when we're taking more than what we're supposed to, when we're sharing medication with others, when we are, so maybe even sometimes when we're taking less than what we're supposed to, because we're like, oh, I feel good, I don't need to take it, but for whatever reason, it's still needed for us to take the prescription medication. Those would be ways of misusing. And with alcohol, it can mean, obviously drinking if you're underage. When people binge drink, meaning that they're drinking too much or drinking more than what their body's able to process, those could be forms of misuse. However, when we misuse, there's a really, really, really thin line that we can easily pass and cross over into abuse. And abuse, without getting too technical, is just simply when the substance starts becoming a problem for the person. So whether it's prescription drugs or alcohol, if the person is, lying, overspending, taking the substance or using the substance as a way to deal with a deeper issue, and they're constantly needing to take it in order to deal with anxiety or stress, those are signs that they're abusing. It's not just, okay, one time you drink more than what you're supposed to, and that was it. It's when it starts becoming a pattern and starts becoming an issue for the person, that we start seeing those signs of abuse, right? It means that regardless of what the consequence may be, they're starting to use the substance more regardless of that. And abuse can look differently for everybody. There isn't like a specific checklist, although when people do get diagnosed with like an addiction disorder, counselors and psychologists, they do have to have a checklist to be able to identify some of these issues. But anybody can say, this person that I care about might be abusing a substance. And it's important for us to identify both things, because some of us may commonly misuse either alcohol, prescription drugs, but that doesn't necessarily mean, that we're abusing or that we have an addiction. And I think that there's a lot of stigma once it comes to that. But if we're having a conversation about it, it can be helpful, because if we're in the stage of misuse and we have done it, whether it was intentional or not, especially once it comes to prescription drugs, because again, the social norms, that it's very common. It seems to be okay for us to just share medication, even though it's not right for us. We can change habits and make things a little bit better for ourselves and our families. So, how many of you all think, or do you all agree or think that either alcohol or prescription drug is an issue in our communities? Okay. So I wanted to share just some information with you all. Alcohol is the most commonly used addictive substance in the United States. 17.6 million people have a dependency on alcohol. More than half of all adults have a family history of alcoholism or a problem drinking. Those that started misusing prescription drugs, especially opioids, started with a legit prescription from a doctor. So thinking about the stuff with alcohol, right? We talked about the fact that it's an addictive substance and a lot of people have a dependency, but I also mentioned how a lot of people have a family history of alcoholism or a problem drinking. Again, this is where families play a crucial role in how people view alcohol. Parents and adults in the communities and around children play a very, very important role in the way that children and teens view alcohol. So it's really important for us to have a clear idea of what kind of message we're trying to send. Again, I think many of us can share stories of at least one point in our lives when we were younger and we saw our tios or somebody in our family trying to have a child sip on alcohol and thinking it was funny or thinking it was normal, or even though they're like, oh, but he's not tasting it or he's just smelling it or something, it normalizes that type of behavior, right? It makes it normal, it makes it okay. And then we end up having other issues. Another thing to consider is that many times in Hispanic cultures, we don't necessarily talk about emotions or feelings, so we can easily use alcohol or any other substance like prescription drugs as a way to deal with some of these issues. And it's important for us to discuss, right, what we're going through. We want to make sure that we're being open with those around us, even though that might make us vulnerable at times. It's important for us to do so. So a quick question for you all. Why do you think that alcohol and prescription drugs may be so commonly misused and abused? Why do you all think that is? And I know I kind of mentioned a couple of things here and there, but for you, like, what is your honest opinion as to why are people misusing or abusing alcohol or prescription drugs? Okay, accessibility, easy access, for sure. Um, coping mechanism for stress. Um, so yeah, definitely. Um, yes, it's legal, right? One of the big things that we talked about. So when we talk about accessibility, we talk about stress, we talk about the fact that it's legal. Those things are an issue or risk factors even right now. The students and everything around us have changed. We're not able to go to certain places. We're working from home. Kids are not going to school. But the three things that we mentioned, and Blanca just added culture normalizing it, the four things that have been mentioned, those things still stand right now, right? It's still accessible because many of us may have either alcohol or prescription drugs at home, and more often than not, we have them in a place where anybody that visits, even though they're not supposed to be right now, or that is within our home will have access to it. And we'll talk about that. But like Lisa mentioned, stress right now is a little bit more higher than it's ever been. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of anxiety that many of us are experiencing. And some of us have never been in situations like this. Well, I don't think any of us have really been in a situation like this, but some of us haven't really, you know, figure out positive ways or healthy ways of how to deal with our stress. So when we're put in a situation like we have been right now, it just makes things a little bit more difficult for us. The fact that illegal prescription drugs and all, they're still legal right now. You're still able to get them. There's the whole issue with alcohol being able to be delivered at homes. Prescription drugs, pharmacies are still doing their jobs and they're providing the prescription drugs to those that have a prescription. So those things are still legal, they're still available, and culture normalizes it. Again, I think by us seeing how alcohol was considered an essential thing, it was considered something that could continue being provided to people. That just shows just how normal and to a certain extent how needed it was in our communities. Not that it was good, but again, our culture was telling us it's okay. And so those things are still an issue. Those are what we call risk factors. I know Alex was mentioning a little bit about risk and protective factors earlier. So that's something for us to keep in mind. Another thing that we're seeing right now is that kids are at home, right? Parents may not always be at home because some parents are still working, but kids more often than not are still at home. Sometimes parents have to leave an older brother, an older sister, or an older family member taking care of them. But kids get bored and kids get curious. So this is why accessibility, and one of the things that we wanted to focus on, we wanted to take some time and focus on that because we want to make sure that we're at least using this time to take some sort of proactive action to that, which is where our protective factors come in play. Knowing and identifying the ways that we can protect kids and we can educate kids and let them know why, even though they may get curious, trying or wanting to use any of these substances is not a good option. So again, with what I had mentioned earlier, we can't just tell kids, oh, don't do it, because that curiosity is always going to be there for them. They're always going to want to think about, well, why not, right? I know that was always the kid asking questions. I think I'm still the adult that asks questions at times because I always just want to know, like, why? Like, tell me why. So for parents, I challenge and I encourage you to really take the time to gain information as to how prescription drugs and alcohol both affect kids and even adults as they're being misused or abused, because it's important for you all to provide that information to your kids. Right now, there is an opportunity for you all to have conversations that maybe in the past you weren't able to because you felt like you weren't going to be able to dedicate enough time to it, or you felt like you were scared about starting those conversations. Right now, it's a really important time to be able to do those things. So, something for you all to consider. Now, in regards to safeguarding, which is how we're going to deal with the whole issue of ability, I wanted to show you a couple of things. Well, I want to show you, but just kind of address something else once it comes to alcohol. So for alcohol, most people keep their alcohol either in like a liquor cabinet, in the fridge. Some people even have like a fridge just for alcohol. So, that's alcohol being accessible to kids. So making sure that there's a way of securing it, keeping it out of reach. If you have young kids, I know some liquors have locks that you can it's either a combination or a key, finding something that's going to be secure, right? Making sure that you're not just leaving it out in the open. There's really no need to leave alcohol out in the open. If you're an adult that wants to keep their alcohol at home, you have every right to do so. What we're just encouraging and challenging you all is to kind of put some safety guards on that, making sure that it's not super accessible. And trust me, kids are always going to look for ways to kind of get away with it. But as adults or parents that have teens, it's important for you all to kind of be a little bit ahead of the curve, make sure that you all are prepared for that. Another trick that I had seen is so this is just a water bottle. But people would normally mark their water bottles or their liquor bottles or their wine bottles, whatever it is. They would mark where the water, where the wine or the liquor is at, to kind of just have an idea. But that's something that you'll be able to see right off the bat, right? So one thing that you could do is flip the bottle and mark it at the bottom. So it still lets you know how much alcohol is in there and if anything has been used. So that's a tip. I've said this tip before, and someone told me, well, when I was young, I used to fill it up with other similar colored substances. So again, there's always going to be a way around it, and kids are going to try to get creative. But just remember, alcohol freezes. I mean, alcohol doesn't freeze. Water freezes. So if you put whatever substance you're wanting to put in the freezer and it freezes, then it's probably not what you think it's in there, right? That's one thing. And then I'm going to show you all real quick about prescription drugs. So for prescription drugs, we have them either in our restroom because there's a medicine cabinet there, or somewhere in our kitchen. So I have this little box, and we purchased these at Walmart. Our coalition had these accessible for the community in the key. So your medication, if that moved too much for you all, you can easily put your medication in here. Now, I don't personally have any prescription drugs. They're just medication like your everyday over-the-counter allergy and Tylenol medication. But we would advise people to take some time to look over their medication, check for expiration dates. Sometimes we tend to keep medication there longer than what we should, so check for that. Whatever medication you do need to keep, because we understand, some of us do need medication, we need it because of, or whatever it is, and the doctor does prescribe it to us, it may, we're going to need it, and it's going to be important for us to keep it with us. So take an inventory, go over what you have, go over what has been expired. Some venues, police departments still have access to their lobby area, and some of it may be restricted, but you can always call your local police department to see if their lobby area is still open for use of your medication. I do know that the Walgreens in McAllen on Page, I believe, or maybe that's far. Some Walgreens do have drop boxes, and you can actually dispose of your medications there. I remember I called them last week, and they were still allowed to do that. So something to keep in mind. If you need more information, you can always go to our PRC website, and that's where you'll be able to find all the locations for the permanent drop boxes across Hidalgo County and across the region. So if you're looking at this video, at this live, and you're from a different area, not just this county, there may be a drop box available for you to utilize. Hopefully, as the orders, the shelter at homes start getting are over, those places will be a little bit more accessible for us. So that's something that we can always use. But in the meantime, if you do have medication, this it was actually a cash box. We just took the black part inside, that's it from on the inside. We took that out to be able to make space. And this one comes with a key. So this is also a good tip if you have if there's older people that you know that may be needing to have and you want it to be secure. Key can be fairly easy for them to use. There are some boxes that have the to switch the numbers. Those may be a little bit harder for them. So something to consider. We just want to make sure that whatever it is that we're keeping our medication is something that's secure and it's not going to be easy to get to. So now you keep your key obviously in a place where the adults are aware of, so kids don't get into it. Sometimes some parents have told me before, well, my kid needs to take medication. The goal is to educate the child on how to properly take their medication if they need to take it on their own, but also addressing the risks and consequences of them possibly missing or abusing or combining medication with substances such as alcohol or other things. So those are other tips to keep in mind. Like I said earlier, there isn't going to be an 100% guarantee type of way, right? The best thing that studies show that helps teens and kids stay away from drugs and alcohol, it's parents talking to them. So again, we encourage you all to take the opportunity to start talking to your kids. I know it's something that my coworkers have said in their own video, but it's really important. Parents, you all make a huge difference in your child's life. So if your child knows that you're disapproving of alcohol or prescription drugs, consider that. I'm not going to say that they'll stop and they will never do it, but they'll consider it. They'll keep that in mind. So make sure you have honest conversations with them, figure stuff out together, take the time to talk. And so another idea is that if your child is with another adult, because they're being taken care of by them, or at any point in time, whether it's right or after the shelter at home orders are lifted, if your child goes to another person's home, make sure that other adult also knows where you stand on alcohol and prescription drugs, right? Making sure that they are also aware of what your rules and guidelines are for your child. That's also something pretty important to keep in mind. So, do you all have any questions? Anything you want to add? I'm gonna give like about a minute or so and see if anybody has any questions, any comments, any part that maybe I might have said something and you were a little bit confused about. Let me know. Okay, so if you all don't have any questions right now, I will go ahead and end the live in the next couple of seconds. Feel free to reach out to our agency. I know our media team has been doing a great job as to any questions anybody might have. Keep a lookout for other videos. done by my coworkers, and there's going to be more videos done by Lizzie and I, who are part of the UNIDAD Coalition. I did want to give a quick insert a quick little shout out to our youth group. We do have a youth trying to keep active during this time. It has been a little bit difficult just because kids have their own schedule with school, and that's a big stressor for them. Again, remember, stress is a so we do have a youth group that we're trying to keep our kids engaged with. At any point are interested in having your child anywhere between the ages of 12 to 17 join in with our youth group in Hidalgo County, then feel free to reach out to us. We can provide you with more information as to how your teen or your child can get involved with our coalition. Our goal, again, for our youth is to provide them with a safe space where they can just engage with the community. They actually do a lot of prevention work themselves, where they're talking to peer to peer on a lot of these issues, because sometimes kids don't want to listen to me, but listen to other individuals that are closer in their age and they can relate to. So again, if you're interested in having your kid join our youth group, just let us know, and we'll be able to provide you with information on that. And at this point, I'll go ahead and end it. Bye, guys.